Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. Unlike Brian Dable, Dennis and I are still here reporting for work. We made it through week 10. I don't know if your teams necessarily totally made it through week 10. Most of mine doing okay, but hope you guys are having a great day out there. Looking forward to looking at week 10, which is now in the books. We looked at the woeful Thursday night game when we were with you on Sunday. We'll kick over to the Berlin game, and we actually sent a pretty decent game over to Berlin. Went to overtime, the Colts getting the 31-25 victory over the Atlanta Falcons. Dennis, for Atlanta, Drake London killing it every week. Bijan Robinson, even if he doesn't kill it on the ground, gets receiving work that's enough. Sometimes you get Algier to pop off. Sometimes you get Pitts to pop off. Sometimes you get Penix to pop off. But is it really just London and Robinson that you're trusting week to week?
I think, Pitts has 4 double-digit games. And tight end is such a vast wasteland after McBride. And, hell, even Bowers has struggled this year. And Laporta has been up and down. Kelsey is, seems to be on the downside. Andrews is on the downside. It's, I think they're, especially if they're at home, playing Pitts is probably going to get you most weeks a top 12 week at the tight end position. Mooney has been a giant disappointment.
I forgot about Mooney. I knew there was somebody else. He's not even been in the lineup half the time.
Yeah, it's been crazy. And, hell, David Sills is still getting targets. I thought he was out of the league years ago. No, I think you're locking and loading London and Bijan. And then, Pitts is, I don't know how, I don't think safe is the word, but he's more than he's definitely better than a dart throw at the tight end position. Especially if they're playing at home. For all the talk about Penix having this big arm, he sure bounces a lot of passes short to people. So, he's I don't think he's not living up to my expectations. But, job one is get the ball to Drake London, and he's doing that.
On the other side for Indianapolis, we talked about Alec Pierce and how he was looking. Ended up having a really good day on Sunday, going for 84 yards and a touchdown. Could he be working his way toward a weekly play?
So he's averaging a career high 6.5 targets per game, 3.5 receptions, and 73 yards per game. And at 20.3 yards per reception, that's not his career average or annual average high. Last year, he was at like 22 or 23 yards per reception. So Pierce is definitely a big play guy. I'd like to see him get a little bit more volume because he only has converted 1 touchdown, and Daniel Jones is leading the league in passing yards. You know what? Michael Pittman only had 2 targets, and so you've got to believe that if they're only going to throw the ball to Michael Pittman twice, Alec Pierce is the guy you want. Outside of that, I think Pittman's volume is going to be fine. Tyler Warren is clicking pretty well. Unfortunately, when Jonathan Taylor is putting up 300 scrimmage yards a game, that makes it a little difficult on the rest of the fantasy assets in Indianapolis. But yeah, I think Pittman is probably a flex plus play on a weekly basis.
Next up on the docket on the Sunday schedule, we had the Chicago Bears playing the New York Giants. The Giants were leading for a while, but Jackson Dart got injured, got knocked out. We'll see if he ends up being available this next week. The Bears come back, get the 24-20 victory. And that was it for Brian Daboll. So how are you feeling about the Brian Daboll firing?
Scott Barrett posted, he was on our show last year, the year before. He's very big into the rookie scouting and stuff, does a great job over at Fantasy Points. And he basically said, look, or somebody was lamenting how the Giants were going to basically hire the hot coordinator in Mike Kafka, because that's what they did. They hired the hot coordinator with Brian Daboll, and what are we going to really expect from that? And Barrett made the point that Brian Daboll wasn't just the hot coordinator. He was a quarterback guru. He had play calling experience in college and at the NFL level. He is the guy credited with turning Josh Allen into a production machine, getting his accuracy in line, really developing a plan and a scheme that worked for him. And then Daboll, it said, wanted to draft Jackson Dart at 3 this year, and they ended up taking Abdul Carter instead. And then Shane, to appease Daboll, traded back into the first to take Dart. So Dart, in Barrett's estimation, is a mini Josh Allen. Dart had I think 64% completion percentage over 4 years in college, started 45 games. And he's like, you keep the GM and you fire the coach that turned Josh Allen into this monster QB after you drafted him, a quarterback much in the vein of Josh Allen. It doesn't seem to make sense. I get it. Something has to happen. And, the GM is fighting for his job. And the sense is, they felt like they had brought in some good assets. The O-line struggled. Evan Neal was a flop. Other O-linemen, weren't great.
That's the part I don't get. Like, I think Joe Shane should have been gone too, and yet they made it real clear he's leading the coaching search and retaining his position, being part of it. I don't think the team's very well built. I'm sure the blown leads, rankled them. I know there was a lot of reports that came out that the ownership had considered firing Brian Daboll off the plane from Denver after they blew that lead. But, aside from Dart, they started to get something going with Cam Scatterbo. He gets injured. Dart doesn't have Malik Neighbors, who's out. You're right about the offensive line being Swiss cheese, getting killed. I mean, it's very likely Mike Kafka, in his first interim game, which also, good luck with that. In his first interim game, is either going to have Russell Wilson's corpse or Jameis Winston out there. So, but who do they really have to throw to? Wan'Dale Robinson is a fine, complimentary short yardage guy. They've invested all this money in Darius Slayton, and I don't think he's bad, but he doesn't really light the world on fire.
He's a wide receiver 3 on a team at best.
And they let letting Saquon walk and like trying to piece the backfield, that was all Joe Shane. And if you watched that off-season edition of Hard Knocks, he looked like he was completely lost. And that's, I just don't understand the rationale. If you're going to clean house and try to right the ship, it's like you have two flat tires and you put the spare on one and you just try to put a sticker on the other and hope that it holds air.
Well, it's the two names as of today linked to the New York job: Bill Belichick, former Giants defensive coordinator under Parcells, and Kevin Stefanski, who there's some talk he was, he was not on board with trading away Joe Flacco this year, and there's a little bit of dissension. He's tired of being hamstrung by the Deshaun Watson deal, and I don't know. Neither one of them really packed me with a ton of inspiration.
No. Meanwhile, for the Bears, last week's hero, Kyle Monangai, went back to a supporting role, but did get 7 carries to 13 for Swift. Not great on the yardage, but does get a touchdown. Do you think even with Swift back and mostly healthy that there is still a role for Kyle Monangai?
Yeah, he's the RB2 on that team, so he's going to get some opportunities. He played 38% of the snaps to Swift 62%. He was out-touched 21-9 by Swift. It kind of that's sort of what I think you would expect. And if you're playing Monangai, you're playing him as a flex in the hope that his explosiveness is going to provide you with a touchdown. Or Ben Johnson, who said, there's going to be, I'm a fan of the guy with the hot hand. And it could be, they have Swift out there for 2 series and he's, putting up 2.5 yards a carry. And on series 3, Monangai goes in, busting off big chunks, and they let him ride and see how far he gets. And it ends up swapping in the other direction towards Monangai. But overall, I think if I'm on a weekly basis, if I'm taking one of these guys and putting in my lineup, that guy is going to be DeAndre Swift. When you have a bunch of buys, Monangai may be kind of a matchup play as well as, a la Tyler Algier.
Had to be one of the most surprising results of the day. The Bills go to Miami, a place that they had not lost, or a team they had not lost to in something over 1,000 days, and they lose 30-13. So huge win against the Chiefs the week before. Just falling apart in Miami. What the hell is up with the Bills?
It's like my dad used to say, sometimes you get the bear, sometimes the bear gets you. And clearly the Bills had a letdown game. They were looking past the Dolphins. We said on Sunday, what does Mike McDaniel have to do? What he has to do is he has to have this team play hard. They're not likely to win a lot of games, but they've still got to be competing, be competitive. And if that happens, there's a chance he can hold on to that job. But, Josh Allen threw the second most pass attempts of the season. In the first game, he threw 42 passes in a 31-30 loss, I think, to Baltimore, or a 42-41 loss to Baltimore, or vice versa. I forget who won the game.
41-40.
Yeah, I knew it was high on one-pointer. And then he threw 40 passes yesterday. Over the last few weeks, what we've seen is they ride the James Cook train. Cook had his lowest what did I put here? Had his lowest amount of carries since week 1. So it was a weird game. Things just didn't go the way they wanted. It wasn't like Miami, turned the ball over a bunch of times from Buffalo or sacked Josh Allen a whole bunch of times. It was just one of those games where it just went the other way.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo did have 3 turnovers, but Miami had 2 turnovers, so it's not like they were incredible. Tua, 15 to 21, 173, 2 and 2. It was really Devon Achane kind of destroying them, but a quality win for Miami. They're now 3-7. They're going to Madrid and they're going to face a reeling Commanders team. They actually are favored, and I think they might win. So it begs the question, how would McDaniel and Tua have to finish this season for you or anyone else to feel good about them next year or continuing on?
So 4 of their last 6 games are winnable in my estimation. Even if they split them and go 3-3, that puts them at what, 6-11. I'm okay if they just show fight. You got some good weapons with Achane, Jalen Waddle. I don't think Waller's the answer at tight end. Tyreek Hill is going to be gone. There's work to do. They need to bring a GM in. The GM, there's going to be, if the Dolphins play hard and the team doesn't check out, the GM is going to get, for lack of a better term, saddled with Mike McDaniel. And then he's going to have to build a team for McDaniel and see what he can do. Maybe it works. McDaniel got the job because he was a pretty good offensive mind. I don't think he suddenly got stupid. I think, sometimes the rosters don't work out. Players don't pan out like you think. You have a game here or there where if you'd made a different call, it might have went the other way. A quarterback that's prone to concussions. You don't really have a real great backup. Well, Tua has been mostly healthy this year. I think 4 of their 7 losses are by 10 or less, but the other 3, they scored 8 points or less. So it isn't, it's kind of, they've been mostly competitive and they have had some games that are blowouts. If they can finish 6-11 and show fight the rest of the way, I think McDaniels gets a chance to turn it around.
Yeah, and their next 3 games are actually winnable. They're against the Commanders in Madrid, then they are home for the Saints at the Jets. So you could see them. I mean, if this team is 6-7 going into mid-December, they might actually even crawl into the playoff race the way things are going. It's just an interesting position, but I'm like you. I need to see a little bit of a step up. So the Baltimore Ravens played the Minnesota Vikings. We thought this was going to be a big game for both teams. The Ravens get the 27-19 victory. The Ravens now move to 4-5. They are only 1 game back of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They still have 2 games with them. It wasn't a spectacular game on offense or defense, but they have really turned things around. 3 straight wins after a 1-5 start. So how are you feeling about the Ravens now?
So as they were constructed and fairly healthy, I don't think we doubted the offense with Lamar and Zay Flowers, Andrews, Likely, Derrick Henry, Rashad Bateman. We knew they had some good weapons. We need Ronnie Stanley to stay healthy. We need the offensive line to perform well. They have some players on defense in Kyle Hamilton and Roquan Smith. They just ended up with a lot of injuries on defense. Luckily, most of them were not season ending, so they've had most everybody come back. And then Lamar got injured, and he's back. And they have a chance to kind of round back into form. They're chasing the Steelers, who, by and large, I don't think we're counting on Aaron Rodgers to elevate this team like he once was able to do with the Packers in his prime. Lamar Lamar is still able to elevate a team. He can put the Ravens on his back and often outscore teams if he needs to. So if the defense kind of continues to improve and Lamar stays healthy, Derrick Henry didn't have a very efficient day, 20 carries for 75 yards. You'd like to see more. He did catch all 3 of his passes, but for only 9 yards. Zay Flowers had 75 yards. The lone touchdown went to Mark Andrews, who has become essentially a touchdown-dependent tight end. If he doesn't get a touchdown, you're looking at 3 points from him, basically. So I think the Ravens are positioning themselves to make a run, and the team they got to beat is the Steelers, who don't look great, frankly.
Yeah, and I mean, as dead as they looked like a month ago, it just feels like the Steelers are tracking to that 9-8 finish, and the Ravens are going to somehow get to 10, or they'll have 9 and sweep the Steelers, and it's going to be I don't know. It's been funny. For the Vikings, we liked Jordan Mason kind of coming into the season. He got a chance to be in the lead role. First couple of games of the year were good, but the last month has been rough. His last 3 games, 4 carries for 3 yards against the Chargers, 10 carries for 36 in a win against Detroit, and only 4 for 25 on Sunday. Only has 1 reception in each of those games. So should we put him on the bench?
Yeah. I mean, he only played 25% of the snaps, and only had 25% of the running back touches. I think as long as Aaron Jones is healthy, Aaron Jones is the far superior running back, even at 30, 31 years old, whatever it is. I don't think the Vikings want J.J. McCarthy throwing the ball 42 times. So that's definitely a situation to monitor. But Jones and Mason combined for just 13 carries. And let's see what they have. 7 targets. 6 of them went to Aaron Jones. So I think you can comfortably start Aaron Jones as a flex, even as a RB2 if you're desperate. But Jordan Mason, much like who is Kyle Monangai, is kind of touchdown dependent.
Yeah, it's been such a bummer because I thought he had potential, and Aaron Jones seemed off at the start of the season, but he's gotten better. I think Minnesota's whole offense has been kind of ridiculous. A game that was horrific. The Jets hosted the Browns, got the 27-20 victory. You might be thinking to yourself, boy, I bet that Jets offense came to life, but we will get to them in just a minute. One guy that did bounce back, Jerry Jeudy, 12 targets, caught 6 for 78 and a touchdown. Is this a promising sign for you, or are you not putting a lot of stock in it?
I'm not putting a ton of stock in it. They only put up 20 points against a defense that traded away their 2 best players last week. And yeah, if the Browns special teams hadn't broke down, sure, they would have won 20-13. But Gabriel only threw for 167 yards on 32 pass attempts. Judkins was relatively inefficient. He's a volume back at this point with this team. He may have some games where he's more efficient, but by and large, 22 for 75 is kind of what you're going to be able to expect from him. And, hopefully he gets a touchdown, but he didn't get one this week. Jeudy got it and Njoku got it. And, Gabriel, I don't think he's not really startable in a super flex league. Judkins is a RB2 on volume. Jeudy, I want to I want to believe in Jeudy. But he only has 3 games over 4 catches all season. Now, this was the second highest targeted game of his career, but the lowest yardage per games of his career. So he's averaging the second highest targets per game of his career, but averaging the lowest receiving yards of his career is how I should have said that the first time.
Yeah, it has seemed like for a lot of the season, Dylan Gabriel only had eyes for Fannin and Njoku. So, I'm sure that Jerry Jeudy scoring spree helped no one because I think almost everyone had sent him to the bench. Maybe a few diehards still playing them out there, but I'll be curious to see if he keeps it up. Fannin still had 7. I'm wondering if the Jets were just better in the middle. We'll see. Jeudy had an incredible year last year. It's been weird. He's kind of completely fallen off. Speaking of kind of falling off, I know the Jets won, but Justin Fields, 6 of 11, 54 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 7 carries for 28 yards, even worse than I thought it was originally 32. It must have dropped. That is not a lot of production. They had 2 special teams touchdowns, which is really kind of how they managed to make this go. Did this help Justin Fields' cause?
So, the way you initially phrased the question is, do we feel better or worse about Justin Fields? And my response was, I don't know if I feel worse, but I don't feel better. They had a chance. They were down close. They had a chance to throw for a touchdown, and they ran a quarterback run on, 3rd and goal or 4th and goal or something. They don't believe in him. They just don't. 11 pass attempts. They got up because of back-to-back special teams returns, and then they kind of tried to play their way through it. And then Breece Hall, so Breece Hall had a 42-yard touchdown run pass on the screen, and they only had 12 more passing yards. Fields threw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 passes to 7 different players for a grand total of 12 yards. It wasn't like it was the Lake Erie wind a la Buffalo and New England a couple seasons ago where Mac Jones threw the ball 3 times. No, they just don't believe in Justin Fields. They lost Garrett Wilson again. I think as soon as Tyrod Taylor gets healthy, they're going to bite the bullet and put Tyrod Taylor in and just try to get to the end of the year. And they're going to cut Fields. They're going to eat whatever contract he has. They're going to let him go. He's going the Trey Lance route. He's going to be QB3 for the next 2 or 3 seasons for these wonderkin quarterback coaches that think they can fix him, they can develop him, and it hurts me to say that.
Well, and they're tracking toward being able to take quarterback, but part of me thinks that they will just keep him because he's not on too expensive of a deal, and have him in the mix with this other quarterback. But I'm not sure it's a short week. That might be the only thing that helps him this week, because I thought after Sunday's game, looking at those numbers, and they have waited till near the end to make a starting quarterback decision, I thought, oh, he's done. But I don't know if they can do it on 3 days rest. But that 54 yards and 6 of 11, and now Garrett Wilson, he came back this week and banged up his knee, is gone for 3 or 4 weeks. Part of me feels bad for Justin Fields because they really have nothing. It's him and a running back. And,
right.
Mason Taylor's a nice tight end too, who's learning the game. But like receivers, you have Castoff, Adonai Mitchell, and you have cast off Tyler Johnson, and you have cast off Alan Lazard. And, if you have to start with the word cast
Don't
off,
forget
and
cast off John Mechie.
I forgot about John Mechie. Yeah. I don't know. It's not like, I don't know. New England Patriots went to Tampa Bay, managed to get the 28-23 victory. A big thing that has to make you and I happy. It was only 14 carries, but Travion Henderson, 147 rushing yards and 2 big touchdowns, broke a couple of big plays. Is this the breakout you were hoping to see?
Honestly, no. Because so we know Travion Henderson can provide this. In college, he was widely regarded as one of the best pass protectors at the running back position. Like there were some reps he had in college where he just laid linebackers out and blitzers out and defensive linemen. He was far superior to just about anybody in college football. I'd like to think that while there are some changes when you get to the NFL, things don't change like that much, but he's been like awful in pass protection at the NFL level. He had 1 target for 3 yards in this game. It's great. Don't get me wrong. It's awesome. Like if he can continue to he played 84% of the snaps. Excuse me. If he can continue to get a high snap count, and then lead the way on the carries. Terrell Jennings got injured, so that during the game, and that kind of helped. Their other active running back was D'Ernest Johnson. So there isn't like I don't think either one of those guys are a huge threat. They're more apt to give Jennings touches. He had 4 carries, but he only had 5 yards. But Travion Henderson, in the realm of running back vision, with, let's say, Kyron Williams and Bucky Irving being at one end and Cam Akers being at the other end, Travion is on the side, the half where Irving and Williams are. But he's not anywhere near where they are as far as vision. He's got good vision. He doesn't have great vision. He's got very good speed, but he can be caught. So there's some concern from college. He got banged up a little bit, had a few soft tissue issues. And I think Vrabel is not going to lean into 20 plus carries for Travion Henderson. 12, 14, I think that's where you're going to see him. And hopefully, maybe it'll take him the rest of this year, but going into next year, maybe he gets that QB protection down and he's able to spend a little more time in the 4-minute drill, 2-minute third down, and get more reps there so he gets more targets. That's the breakout I want to see from him. But 147 yards, 2 touchdowns with a 55-yarder and a 69-yarder. Yeah, outside of Devon Achan's 174 yards and Jonathan Taylor's 5,732,453 yards. Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, and what's troubling to me is the 14 carries, and he was still splitting time. And part of me wonders if he only got more carries because Terrell Jennings got injured.
Oh, I think so. I think you probably take at least 4 of those carries away and give them to Jennings if Jennings doesn't get injured at a minimum. Then you're looking at a 10-8 split. Now, that being said, Jennings was not being very productive with his carries.
Yeah.
So outside of Henderson's 2 big runs, he wasn't super productive with his carries either.
He apparently tweaked his knee, so we'll see how he's doing. But they're going to it's a short week for them, and Ramondre is back practicing, so we'll see what comes of it. Uh, for Tampa Bay, how much do they need Bucky Irving back?
So Bucky averaged 18 carries per game and was running back 9 through the first 4 weeks, averaged 18 points per game. White is averaging 13 and a half points per game, about 13 carries. I'd like to, in Irving's absence, I really would have liked to have seen Sean Tucker get more run. He split carries with White this week, had 9 to White's 10. Tucker's a little bit bigger, has better vision, but for whatever reason, they just weren't willing to, on any consistent basis, let him be the lead runner. I'd like to see Tucker be more active. When Bucky comes back, if he's healthy, you can expect Bucky to be 80% of the snaps, 90% of the touches at the running back position, because he's just phenomenal inside runner. While he doesn't have, he's maybe just a slight notch. He's maybe a notch above David Montgomery in the speed category. He's every bit as elusive as Montgomery in the hole. So, I think they have capable backups, but you're probably only going to get about 80% production out of the two of them combined of what Bucky Irving gives you.
Next up, and maybe waiting a while, it seems like Bucky Irving and Chris Godwin are not that close to returning. So next up, another game that was just a shock. New Orleans Saints getting a 17-7 win over the Carolina Panthers. Tyler Shook wasn't great in his first start, but looked a lot better in his second start. 19 of 27, 282 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Not much of a runner, but connected with Olave and Juwan Johnson. Each of them, over 100 or close to 100, getting a touchdown. How did you feel about Shook?
So I liked what I saw, but there's always a but. It was the Panthers. So while the Panthers are improved their defense over last year, they do give up the 12th most passing yards in the league, and they get the 3rd fewest sacks. So this was a game where Shook should have been able to be productive as a passer. And he was. 262 yards, 2 touchdowns. So, let's see, can he build on this? He got it to the guys he needed to. Olave, Juwan Johnson, Alvin Kamara was 3rd on the team, tied with Foster Moreau and Devon Vele with 3 targets. But Kamara had 22 carries, put up 83 yards on the ground. That's definitely a positive. But yeah, 104 yards and a touchdown for Olave. Check. I'll take it.
Meanwhile, on the other side, Bryce Young, another woeful game. They're still getting, some production from Dowdle in that running game, though teams focusing on taking that away. Young, 17 of 25, only 124 passing yards, no touchdowns, and interception. Also lost a fumble. Is he holding this team back?
Boy, it sure feels like it, doesn't it? I mean, not that Dalton is the answer, but
depends on the question, I guess.
We felt like we were seeing some growth out of Young, and then he's regressed again, and I'm not sure why, because we've seen Canales work real well with quarterbacks and get a lot of good production out of them. He did it with Baker, he did it with Geno, and it looked like they were headed down that path with Young. For whatever reason, it's just not quite the same thing. Ted McMillan got the targets. That's who you want him throwing the ball to. Dowdle led the way running the ball at 18 carries to Hubbard's 3, but he was not efficient at all, less than 3 yards a carry, though he did get in the end zone. I just think it's hard to win when your quarterback throws for 124 yards if your defense isn't getting you turnovers or getting you short fields. And with the lack of pass rush that Carolina has, it tends to leave Bryce Young and the offense in long field situations.
Next up, the Jacksonville Jaguars went to Houston. They were leading 29-10 after 3 quarters and managed a 36-29 loss in regulation. We also got a bit of bad news for Jacksonville, which dropped to 5-4. They still apparently hold the tiebreaker. If the playoffs started today, they would be the 7th seed in over Kansas City. But they're not really going the right direction. And now Travis Hunter had surgery, will be out for the rest of the season. That probably clarifies why they paid up a little to get Jacoby Myers. But what does that mean for the Jaguars?
So I get that Trevor was not terribly efficient, but Trevor didn't give up 3 touchdowns in the 4th quarter. He did give up 1, but he didn't give up the other 3. It's when that's happening to your defense, that's tough. But those last 3 touchdowns, what were they? 14-yard run by Mills, a 7-yard touchdown to Schultz, and a 12-yard touchdown to Higgins. And 13, 6, and 14 play drives. So Houston had the ball. They were eating up the clock, eating up yards. I like Houston's defense. I'm surprised that they gave up the points that they did early, but that's why you play the game. Lawrence, he just isn't panning out to be that guy we thought he was when he was drafted. That doesn't mean he can't become that guy, but we're second contract in now, and it's time to figure it out. They didn't get a whole lot out of the running game, 58 yards out of ETN. Myers caught all 3 of his passes. Parker Washington led him in targets, caught a touchdown pass.
He also had a punt return touchdown, so not all those points were on the defense.
Yeah, so it's just a situation where, those 4th quarter points, a lot of 21 of them were. So, anyways, it's tough, when you crash and burn like that.
No, I mean it wasn't all on Houston's defense,
right? When you crash and burn like Jacksonville's defense did, giving up those 3 late touchdowns, it feels like they're probably going to have a new defensive coordinator at the very least.
I haven't been super impressed with what Liam Cohen's done with their offense either. Trevor Lawrence hasn't really looked good. I don't know that they would have been up as big as they were had Houston's offense not turned it over a couple times deep and they got a punt return for a touchdown, because Trevor Lawrence has been kind of all over the place. Houston, meanwhile, they came in 3-5. They got that heartbreaking loss to Denver in week 9. How big was this win for them?
It was huge to get the win, especially with Davis Mills at quarterback. CJ Stroud out. I mean, Collins had 15 targets. Schultz had 11. Higgins had 7. Mills how often do you want your backup throwing the ball 45 times? Not very, but Woody Marks he wasn't getting a lot of early production. He ended up with 14 for 63 and a touchdown, but it just ended up Davis Mills had to put the team on his back, and he did an admirable job. Now, that being said, I don't know how many weeks you can count on that kind of performance from Davis Mills. So getting CJ Stroud back is paramount to their future. I'm not keen on where they're going to be. They got Tennessee next week. They should be able to win that one, but it's a division game and we see some stuff. But after that, they got Buffalo, Indy, and Kansas City, and that's going to be a tough stretch. They're going to need to hit on all cylinders in every single one of those games, because when you're sitting at what, 4-5, you have a potential to get to 5-5 next week. You don't want to come out of this stretch of 4 games sitting at 5-8 now, back in a hole.
The afternoon window, the Seattle Seahawks hosted the Arizona Cardinals, got the 44-22 victory. Dennis, are we kind of just avoiding Arizona's backfield? I know DeMarcado had a big run and a big reception that kind of made his overall yardage numbers look a little bit better, but it's been a real slog trying to keep track of whether any of these guys are going to give you anything worthwhile week to week.
Yeah, I think if you have to start, if you're like, look, I have to start one Arizona running back in my last flex spot, I don't have a choice. The guy is DeMarcado because he's their pass catching back. It was great that he put up the 55-yard run to boost his yards. That put him over 100 scrimmage yards on the day. And with 3 receptions, that gave him 13 points. I think ultimately he's a 7, 8-point, 6, 8-point floor, low-end flex play with the hope he can get in the end zone, because he can score. And we've seen on the running play, if he's the change of pace back, he might get 4, 5, 6 carries and do a little bit of damage there. But by and large, Zonovan Knight's not really giving you anything. Michael Carter is bouncing back and forth between the practice squad. He had his shot to secure the job and couldn't. So now they're basically just flailing.
We'll see if Trey Benson comes back. I'll be curious to see, because you say DeMarcado is their pass catching back. He was more productive, but Bam Knight saw the same number of targets, and that gives me a little bit of pause. For Seattle, I think we've kind of just accepted that it's going to be disappointing playing Walker this year, but he is in a contract year. It would seem, based on the way they're running this backfield, that he isn't their long-term answer. So if you had him in Dynasty, what are you thinking about his long-term prospects?
So he's a very good running back, and I'd like to see him get an opportunity. Unfortunately, he's struggled with injuries over his career. He's sitting at RB 27 right now. Charbonnet's got 1 year left on his contract. George Halani's a free agent. Halani has looked good in spot duty. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they let Walker go in free agency and they bring Halani back as a restricted free agent to be the backup to Charbonnet, the second guy. And they've got a running back out of Georgia, Kenny McIntosh, who got injured this year, that had started to come on a little bit at the end of last year as a pass catcher. Now, I think Walker feels like a gamble that you're going to take in the offseason with the hope he lands somewhere to get a shot. Can he be next year's Javonte Williams? Can he go somewhere where he's going to get that kind of volume to himself? Who knows?
Big matchup in the NFC West. The Rams went to San Francisco, got the 42-26 victory. Matthew Stafford, 280 yards, 4 more touchdowns now, 25 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. The Rams tied for the best record in the NFC. Could he be getting some MVP love?
Could he? He should be. I mean, damn, he's fourth in passing yards. He's got a 25-2 touchdown to interception ratio. He's the only quarterback with more than 20 touchdown passes so far on the year. He's got that offense rolling with Nakua, Devontae Adams, random tight end of the week, and Kyron Williams, and then even a little bit of Blake Corum in there. So, yeah, I think he's playing really, really well. They're one of those teams. Their defense has recovered from the retirement of Aaron Donald. You can't really replace Aaron Donald, but Jared Verse and Byron Young and those guys there are playing really well on that side of the ball. And once they get into the playoffs, the Rams can be very dangerous.
The 49ers, second week in a row, we got Brian Robinson a little bit involved here. He caught a pass, but also had 8 carries, 41 yards, another rushing touchdown. Are you liking him more as a flex option down the stretch?
Not really. I mean, I think he's probably the number one handcuff. CMC's running back 2 on the year. He's averaging, I think, like 23 points a game or something crazy like that. CMC outtouched Brian Robinson 22-9. It's clear that they use Robinson to spell CMC. He's a little bit of a change of pace. He's a big back, so they don't mind hammering him inside to take some of those poundings off of CMC. And occasionally he's popping one and they may do it at the 8 or 9 yard line to see if he can get a little bit closer, and he's punching it into the end zone here and there. So, I think Robinson, he hasn't quite moved into that Tyler Algier kind of quasi standalone flex yet. We'll see. Maybe he gets there by the end of the season.
The final game of the late window, the Lions went to Washington and doubled up on the Commanders 44-22. A lot made after the game that Dan Campbell took over offensive play calling. Do you think that was a good move?
It was this week, he took over play calling and then played a bad Washington defense.
I think really he has Jahmyr Gibbs on his fantasy team, and he was like, enough of this career low.
He's got Jahmyr Gibbs and Jameson Williams.
Yeah, there you go.
But I mean, Washington gives up the second most passing yards per game and the 10th most rush yards per game. It was a defense that could be had, and Detroit's got weapons.
Meanwhile, for the Commanders, we were excited about Bill, the running back, going in. They don't have a lot going for them on offense, and that includes not much of a running game. Only 105 carries, 470 yards, and 4 touchdowns for the season. What are you doing with Bill? We have not seen him even get back to 40 yards in the last 4 ball games.
I think by and large, the Washington running game is a stay away. Here's how it's going to work.
Might be worse than Arizona.
Because I feel much better. Honestly, I feel better about DeMarcado than I do about Jeremy McNichols in the past game. So, to me, this feels like a lost season for Washington. Jaden Daniels has been in and out. Terry McLaurin has been mostly out. Debo missed a game, and it's just, losing Eckler. Would that have made a difference if he stayed healthy? Who knows? Maybe. He looked really washed last year, but looked better at the beginning of this season. Bill is leading the way. He had 44% of the 44% of the snaps to Rodriguez 33, McNichols 31. That's not the type of split you're looking for fantasy when it comes to production. He outtouched the others, 11 touches to each of them, had 6 touches, but Rodriguez is the one that got the touchdown. So, it's pretty much whoever you think is gonna, if you start one of these guys, you're gambling on them getting a touchdown.
Sunday Night Football, Pittsburgh went to the Los Angeles Chargers and pretty much didn't show up. It was a 25-10 Charger victory. Dennis, we've talked about Aaron Rodgers, coming into the season and early in the season, he talked about, maybe I'll be able to play beyond this year. Halfway through now, 1,853 passing yards through, I think they've only played 8 games. Yeah, no, they played 9 games, 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, really can't run for much. He's mostly a statue back there. Is he kind of washed?
Yeah, pretty much. I think, it's going to be an up and down year. He's going to have a few games where, he scores you 25 points like week 1 or what was that, week 7. He had 24.6. Both of those weeks he threw 4 touchdowns. If he's not going to throw 4 touchdowns, he's probably a low-end QB2. I'm starting him over Bryce Young. I'm starting him over Marcus Mariota. So, it's just one of those situations. The team, I think if Pittsburgh will have him, I think he'll come back next year because that's kind of what Mike Tomlin does. He's going to take the veteran and he's going to try to build around the veteran. And they've got TJ Watt just signed an extension, and Cam Hayward is, at the sunset of his career. So they don't want to go to a rookie. They just don't. And they don't put themselves in position to draft a top end rookie. Who knows? Will Howard's been on IR all week or all season, all week too, but all season. And maybe he ends up after, essentially redshirting this year, coming in next year and being able to do something. He had a great run for Ohio State, taking them to the Natty last year. And maybe he's able to, be the backup to Rodgers next year. And if Rodgers falters, now you've got the young guy to be able to come in and push him forward. But it's, Rodgers is, low-end QB2 guy basically the rest of the way. And you got to understand, there's going to be some games where he's not that either.
Well, and you're right about that. On a points per game basis, QB 24. The 2 right below him are CJ Stroud, who has definitely been on the struggle bus, and Justin Fields, who we did not have glowing things to say about. The 2 right above him, JJ McCarthy and Kyler Murray. I have to be honest, that's just not the neighborhood you think of when you think of Aaron Rodgers historically. For the Chargers, we mentioned Kamani Vidal is like hot and cold. This was one of his hot weeks, but I want to ask you, probably not bringing back Najee Harris, who was on a one-year deal. They have Omarion Hampton. I think originally we thought that when they took Vidal last year, maybe they were trying to look at him for the future. Didn't really pan out coming into the season, but could he be kind of a platoon guy with Omarion Hampton?
So he's RB9 in the last 5 games. And it's been a roller coaster ride. Like it's rotated each week. He's had 3 games over 17 points and 2 games 8 points or less. So it's been up and down. I think he's less a platoon and more a change of pace. A guy that gets, 30, 35% of the snaps. I just think with Omarion Hampton, you've got a bell cow back there. And, while he's not quite Jonathan Taylor, I think Omarion Hampton has the potential to be at least what peak Najee was or better.
Final game of the week, Monday Night Football. We began and ended week 10 on kind of a sour note. You know, it was a 10-7 barn burner on Thursday Night Football. It was a 10-7 barn burner on Monday Night Football as well. The Eagles getting the 10-7 victory in Green Bay was actually scoreless at the half.
Well, if these were barn burners, these barns were built by the Amish, and they did not use any power tools.
The Eagles now
forever.
The Eagles are now 7-2. If the playoffs started today, they would be the 1 seed in the NFC. Are they still the best team in the NFC?
So I think the best team in the NFC is going to depend on who gets hot. I think I'd take Detroit over them right now. I think Detroit has a lot more explosive ability. There's definitely concerns about Philadelphia's offense having to play catch up. We've seen them do it once this year where they've had to have a higher volume passing attack. Barkley is performing at about half the level he did last year. The passing game is kind of really putrid, and it can't support two high-end wide receivers that they roster.
Not to mention a tight end.
Yeah. So it's just their offensive line, it has struggled since it's had to be rebuilt. You know, they've let some guys go, some guys have retired, and it's not what it once was, and it shows. I mean, they let Brandon Graham come back out of retirement to help their defense, which was one of their strengths already.
I think if you would have said yes, they would have taken Jason Kelce right off of the ESPN set and put him into the game on
I think they would have. They would have.
So, yeah. They're an unspectacular team, but it's kind of an unspectacular NFC, in total right now. Like if the playoffs started today, you'd have the Eagles number 1, Seahawks number 2. They've had some good moments, but there's still questions. Detroit 3. You and I both love Detroit, but it's fair to say they've had some unspectacular moments. Tampa Bay kind of beat to hell. The Rams, if they win this week, could end up vaulting. They have that weird loss to the Eagles thanks to them not knowing how to kick. If the playoffs started today, Chicago Bears would be the 6th seed, and I know they've won 5 straight, but holy cow, their games have been not that impressive. And then our last seed would be these Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers came in as pretty heavy favorites, especially after making that big trade for Micah Parsons. And they looked good week 1 against Detroit. They did pretty decently week 2 against the Commanders, but they have some really fraud games on there. They lost to the Browns. They lost to the Panthers at home. They lost this game to the Eagles. Looked like they couldn't find their offense with 2 hands and a flashlight. They almost lost to the Cardinals in a game where the Cardinals came roaring back. How are you feeling about the Packers?
So, like last night, Jordan Love missed some throws, and they're not quite clicking yet. They took some shots with Christian Watson, and Love was just off the mark with him. He either underthrew him or he threw it a little too far inside when he should have thrown it more outside. Josh Jacobs, God bless him, is out there grinding. He is putting in work. And it's not always easy. They lost Elgton Jenkins. I think they had another offensive lineman go down this week along with Jenkins. So now their offensive line is getting super banged up. They've lost Tucker Kraft. Well, Musgrave was, okay as a tight end. He wasn't great for fantasy. I think he'll be fine. I think he moves into that giant tier of tight ends. Matthew Golden was a late out. So, Romeo Doubs, there were some passes that probably should have been hit to him that were just thrown in a spot the defender could make a play. So, I think a lot of this is Jordan Love has to get better. He has to get better with his ball placement. He has to get better putting his receivers in more consistently in an opportunity position where they can make plays.
Yeah, and the back-to-back home loss is a little bit tough. They're at the Giants this week, which should be a winnable game, but who the hell knows? But then they close Vikings, Lions, Bears, Broncos, Bears, Ravens, Vikings. That tie that they have with Dallas, those ties we've seen, they can either help give you the tiebreaker to get in, or they can be the tiebreaker that pushes you out. And that is, they're playing like around 500 ball right now. If they have a weak stretch in there and a lot of division games, Minnesota hasn't been incredible, but they're going to be a tough out. Chicago actually has a better record than them right now. Detroit has a better record than them right now, and will be at home. Green Bay does not look spectacular, and I think that Kraft injury killed some of their pass offense. They haven't found any continuity with any of the receivers, and you're right, those offensive line injuries are problematic. They're almost looking like the Browns. They have a pretty good defense, but they can't seem to get their offense together. Only it's not rookie Dylan Gabriel back there. It's Jordan Love, who coming into the season, people were talking about should be the NFL MVP candidate. I have not seen one game this season from him that makes me think he should be anywhere in the discussion for MVP.
Yeah, I don't think he should be in the MVP discussion.
Well, that'll do it for week 10. We will let that one go. Week 11, only two teams on a bye this week, the New Orleans Saints and the Indianapolis Colts. So we do have some more games. We have some big matchups in all the windows. Maybe not Thursday night where the Jets are at the Patriots. I don't have a lot of high hopes for that. But there are some good games coming up. We will be back on Thursday to talk about that. But Dennis, if people need something to fill their time, what can they do?
Swing on by your favorite podcast platform, hit that search button, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, give us a subscribe, give us a like.
We would appreciate it. That'll do it for us today. We will see you on Thursday.